it is incredibly important to be skilled and to have skills. And there's a lot of reasons why. So we're going to talk about and explore becoming a skilled human and why Jeff and I are so passionate about developing new skills, particularly land-based skills, traditional skills, ancestral skills, and knowledge, because knowledge is a skill, to become more resilient and to also be of greater service in the context of a community. So maybe to start, I want to share a little story about, there's a book called A New Path by Arthur Haynes. And in that book, there is a list at the end of the book of all the basic skills that, a 18-year-old would know when they're transitioning to their adulthood. If we were to live in a more, traditional society structure. So those skills include hide tanning, being able to start a fire by friction, knowing how to drink clean water, store clean water. There would be social skills. There would be ceremonial skills. There would be, carving skills, bow hunting skills, and everyone in that group would have a very, very strong baseline of skills that they could then go into their community and offer. You don't have to be good at everything. And oftentimes you will have a gift in one area and you can go down that thread and get stronger and more skilled in one particular area. But it's very, very important to have a foundational skill, even with food. So like this skill of harvesting or hunting your own food, but then also knowing how to prepare food, what food is nourishing, how to feed a community well.
Yeah. So what are some of the craziest skills events you've done?
Well, I would say some of the hardest skills I have learned that require a lot of detail and attention, because they're truly like alchemy. And one thing that, if you do one thing, air quote, wrong, it can really change the outcome. I would say hide tanning is high up there. Friction fire is up there. I had learned how to make a knife from scratch. It was actually from a piece of a vehicle, the
Coil spring?
Yeah, I think the coil spring, or I can't remember. It was a piece from an old vehicle, and I had forged it under a mentor's guidance to make 2 knives myself. That was very tricky, and I remember my forearms were incredibly sore. What else? There was, I had also made my own bow from scratch. So this was, I went to, was made out of vine maple because I was living out west at the time. And I had chosen the tree, cut down that tree, and then fast forward through all the steps, I was able to shoot a bow, from scratch. And yeah, those are the ones that come up, really, they just come up right now. What about you?
If I had to pick like craziest skills, well, here's like just a funny one. It's like my skill of swimming is horrific. I swim for dear life. So there's like a pretty basic human skill that I probably could really, really work on. I think the skill of like when we first started hunting, me and Dariya, just trying to be like stealthy and be quiet, like not used to doing that in your day-to-day life. I think that was a cool skill. In high school, we did some cool stuff like navigating for canoeing trips or hiking. A cool one we did in high school was making quinzies. I feel like that's a fun skill to have in the winter now with kids, but even if there was a survival situation, making a winter shelter, it's a rather fun and useful skill to have if you get lost outside.
I would say one of Jeff's strongest skills is actually fixing things. And I think maybe you could share about that. So one thing that we see often is, people want to go into the skills and the like primitive skills realm. And yet, we're almost everyone is like driving a vehicle or live in some form of house. And then when things break down, they end up having to pay a lot of money to pay someone with skill to fix it. And that is something that when I met Jeff, I valued a lot as one of his ways of service to our relationship is that he could fix a lot of things. So when things would happen with with our home or our tiny house or our wood stove or our vehicle, it was a very, very important skill to have. Do you want to speak to any of that?
Yeah, so by trade, I was an automobile mechanic. Um, and to give a little bit of a background, I grew up with a single mom, so there was no male figure in the upbringing where I would have learned any mechanical skills whatsoever. Like everything I learned was from like auto shop trades classes in high school, and then just self-develop, self-learning, and then actually getting a career, which I, funny enough, chose it just because it was something at the time I thought like, okay, if there's the zombie apocalypse or the world ever comes to an end, like we're gonna need to know how to fix cars. So it was kind of like, oh, it's a useful skill. Might as well try it. And I liked cars. But yeah, definitely developing a skill like that where there's some intuition, but also you're just working with your hands and you're doing so many different things, like electrical, plumbing, HVAC. Like there's so many different aspects to the vehicle to know the basics of that, and then had to solve so many, interesting diagnostic situations now into, my later years, having that ability to adapt, learn, and actually be skillful in something, and almost I would say like mastery, because then we can apply that to anything else that I do. So like if I try to learn friction fire or maybe a hands-on skill or anything else, it's like okay, like I figured this out. I know I could figure this other thing out. So it's not that insurmountable or overwhelming. And I think lacking, I'd say common like hands-on skills of like carpentry, plumbing, and they all don't have to be like trades jobs, but just knowing how these different things work will lend itself huge to, working with natural materials like we would do in our courses.
Yeah, so in our courses, we always teach skills and it can look different. The skill could also be a craft. So it could be basket weaving or working with wild clay and making pottery. It could also be making cordage from plants or even just making tinctures and salves and really getting into your body because these skills the knowledge that you learn across these skills of getting into your body, problem solving, again, using your hands, this is where you can actually get a real life experience of like, you can't learn about the alchemy of wood or if you want to learn about trees and wood and earth, you need to work with the trees. So that could look like friction fire. It could look like, making a bow. Like there has to be a real life relationship. Same with plants, encouraging people to actually work with the plant, not just read the book and then call themselves an herbalist because they just buy plants online and then, make tea blends or something. We really want to know these plants from a visceral experience, being in our senses, and then those skills can transfer. So another example here that comes up with plants is when we learn how to ID one plant, that skill transfers across all plants. So then you can learn the other plants faster because you've broken that barrier of just the basics with one plant. And so what I love about developing skills and learning more skills and being well-rounded in in the skills that I can offer is that I can offer multiple ways of being in service when I'm in a community. So I don't have to just step in. Like, I don't always have to be the fire tender, but if someone is not able to fulfill that role in my circle, for example, this would happen at teaching drum, is there were multiple people who were skilled in multiple things. So when someone was sick or having a bad day and couldn't step into that role, then I would do it. But I was not always the one starting the fire by friction every night. But when the pack needed someone, I could step up because I had that skill.
Yeah, and I just think of like if someone's really logical, science minded, and we just think of like the physics of something. We just did a group event with Impact ON, and we had a bunch of inner city kids trying to start a fire. It was a challenge, 10 minutes. They had as many matches as they could, and they had to be able to start a fire. Well, watching, you think it's simple in your mind, like these kids know wood burns, birch bark burns, paper, that type of stuff, dry leaves. Yet, even with 10 minutes and like handfuls of matches, they couldn't get the fire going. And then we repeated this again with, I think it was 7 minutes and only one match. And then these kids took everything they learned from that first experience, because you assume like, oh, we're just going to light this thing. And then, it was just, oh, everything's going to catch on fire, but it doesn't work like that. There's wind, there's how you pile things together. What's the airflow moving through those little sticks or the logs? There's so much that goes in just like handling and tending a fire, and let alone just starting it, that like these kids, and I just think of myself, like using a wood stove growing up. Yeah, like there's a science, there's a relationship to that you can only know once you've done it. You can watch a wiki how or something like 100 times. Okay, this is how I do it. And there still might be challenges that come up that you weren't expecting. And then you have to face the natural world and what it throws at you.
And I think too, one of the reasons why learning new skills is so important is, people want to feel confident, right? They want to feel empowered. They want to walk through the world centered and embodied. And to do that, you have to have skills, because having that skill. So after I, went through various forms of survival experiences, where I was walking out into a wilderness setting that I didn't know. I was dropped off in a random location with no knife and just the clothes on my back. And then, they came and got us a few days later. After experiencing that, I get to walk through the world with so much more confidence, because I know that I can, if I was in a survival situation, I know enough and I have enough skills and resources to be able to, live through that and find my way out if I was in a serious situation. So I can walk through the world, calmer and more centered. And with that, I would say, don't ever assume someone, just by what someone looks like, because I would say a lot of people probably see me, people who don't know me at all, probably see me and could not believe that I do this type of work on the side. And it's like a secret, it's like a secret power that I can whip out sometimes.
Yeah, just that like screams to my martial arts background, and like the confidence I carry doing Muay Thai and having fought and won, and then like doing a few years of jiu-jitsu now. It's like the confidence I can carry around, like not saying I could defeat any enemy, but it's like even going out into the woods, it's like, oh, I know what it takes to like break a nose, or I've seen, knees get separated, or like, oh yeah, like I know how easily an injury can happen. I know, I can carry an air of confidence because I don't feel weak or at risk, or there's just so much that can do for our fear in just wilderness experiences, having that confidence in ourselves and our abilities. If we've pushed ourselves in the past, like fighting has definitely done that, and I've talked about that in podcasts before, where it's like I've fasted, I've trained hard, I've did all this hard work, where it's like, okay, whatever life could throw at me, it's like, oh, okay, I know I can handle this.
And the beauty in this, and this is why we run in-person programs like this, it's so important because you can't learn martial arts through a YouTube video. You can't learn friction fire through a YouTube video. I mean, of course you can intellectually, but then putting that into practice, you have to embody, you have to be actually training these skills and learning and failing and then figuring out problem solving and then moving through. So it's something that really requires direct experience. So if you're interested in learning some of these skills that we mentioned on this episode, just check out in the show notes, there's a link to our programs for this coming year, or just reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd love to keep developing our skills all together.